You open an app to check the weather, and 4 minutes later, you are still there, looking at a stranger's vacation, a colleague's promotion, a friend's new kitchen. You did not plan to compare your life to theirs. Nobody asked you to. And yet, somewhere in that scroll, a quiet verdict formed about how your own life measures up. Most people explain this with a single word: insecurity. As if the problem is a personal flaw, something to be meditated away or fixed with more gratitude journaling. That explanation is comforting because it makes the behavior sound optional. But comparing yourself to others is not a modern glitch in your personality. It is one of the oldest, most carefully tuned instincts your body has, and the story of why it exists is far stranger than simple vanity. Start with a question that sounds almost too simple to matter. Why would a brain evolve to care, constantly and automatically, about how it stacks up against everyone nearby? In 1954, the psychologist Leon Festinger proposed an answer that became known as social comparison theory. His claim was that people do not have a reliable internal ruler for judging their own abilities, opinions, or worth. There is no built-in gauge that tells you, in isolation, whether you are doing well. So the mind borrows a ruler from the people around it. It measures itself against others because, in the absence of an objective standard, other people are the only standard available. That alone would explain some comparison. But it does not explain why the feeling is often so sharp, so immediate, so hard to switch off. Festinger's theory describes a mechanism, not an intensity. It tells you why comparison happens at all, but it does not explain why losing a comparison can feel less like mild curiosity and more like a small physical blow. For that, the story has to go back much further than a 1950s psychology lab. Ask yourself when you last felt genuinely neutral about someone else's success. If you are honest, that feeling is rare. Even mild comparisons carry a small emotional charge, a flicker of relief or unease, as if something were quietly at stake. That charge is the detail worth explaining, and it points towards something older and more urgent than a simple lack of an internal ruler. Picture a small band of humans, perhaps 30 people, moving together across a landscape roughly 12,000 years ago. Anthropologists who study surviving hunter-gatherer societies, and the archaeological record left behind by ancient ones, have found something that seems to contradict what people usually assume about early human life. These groups were not casually equal by accident. They were often fiercely, deliberately equal, and they worked hard to keep it that way. The anthropologist Christopher Boehm spent decades studying this pattern and gave it a name: reverse dominance hierarchy. In most primate groups, a dominant individual or small coalitions controls resources and mates, and everyone else defers. Early human bands did something unusual. When an individual began accumulating too much status, too much food, too much control over others, the rest of the group would push back through gossip, ridicule, ostracism, or, in extreme cases, expulsion. Bragging was punished. Bossiness was punished. Standing out too far above the group was treated less like success and more like a threat to be managed. Boehm based much of this on decades of ethnographic reports from foraging societies across different continents, from the Kalahari to the Arctic, and the pattern showed up again and again. A skilled hunter who returned with a large kill was often expected to downplay it, sometimes even to insult his own catch before others could. Anyone caught bragging risked mockery sharp enough to reshape their behavior permanently. This was not politeness. It was social engineering, carried out informally by an entire group, aimed at making sure no single person's success translated into lasting power over everyone else. Here is the part that reframes everything. If your ancestors lived in groups that were actively hostile to anyone becoming too dominant, then survival did not just depend on gathering enough food or avoiding predators. It depended on constant, careful monitoring of your own rank compared to everyone around you, in both directions. Too far below the group, and you risked being exploited or ignored when resources were divided. Too far above the group, and you risked being torn down before the group tore you down for you. That is a very different picture than the one people usually imagine, of comparison as pure vanity, some idle wish to feel superior. Comparison in this light looks more like a constant low-level surveillance system, built to answer one urgent question: where do I currently stand, And is that position safe? Now bring that instinct into the present, and something strange becomes visible. Researchers studying well-being and income have repeatedly found that a person's satisfaction with their pay depends less on the actual number on their paycheck than on how that number compares to the people around them. A 2010 study by the economists Christopher Boyce, Gordon Brown, and Simon Moore, tracking thousands of people over several years, found that a person's rank within their reference group, meaning simply where they stood relative to friends, neighbors, and co-workers, predicted life satisfaction more strongly than their absolute income did. Two people earning the exact same salary can feel completely differently about their lives, depending entirely on who they are measuring themselves against. What makes this finding so telling is what it rules out. If satisfaction tracked absolute income, then a raise should reliably make anyone feel better off, regardless of what their neighbors earned. But the data kept showing the opposite pattern. A person earning more than most people around them often reported higher satisfaction than someone earning considerably more in absolute terms, but surrounded by even wealthier peers. The number in the bank account mattered less than the position on the ladder, exactly the kind of relative accounting an old rank monitoring instinct would produce, and exactly the kind absolute income cannot explain on its own. This is where the old machinery starts to look less like a bug and more like a very literal survival tool, still running its original program in an environment it was never designed for. For your ancestors, the reference group was small and fixed. 30 people, maybe 50, all known personally, all visible every day around the same fire. Comparing yourself to them was not just possible, it was necessary. And the group itself was small enough that your relative rank actually meant something concrete. Who eats first? Who gets defended? Whose opinion carries weight when a decision is made? Your reference group today is not 30 people. It is, for many people, effectively unlimited. Every scroll of a feed introduces new comparison targets pulled from anywhere on the planet, curated specifically to show the most impressive version of each person's life. Your ancient rank monitoring instinct, built for a fixed and knowable group where your position had real, immediate consequences, is now running constant comparisons against a reference group so large and so selectively edited that no rank could ever feel secure inside it. This is the counterintuitive twist worth sitting with. The instinct to compare yourself to others did not evolve because early human life was full of status-seeking and hierarchy. It evolved, at least in significant part, because early human groups worked so hard to prevent hierarchy that everyone had to stay alert to their own position within it, constantly, just to avoid the penalties of standing out in either direction. The vigilance was protective. It kept individuals from being crushed by a dominant few, and it kept individuals from becoming the dominant few and inviting the group's collective anger. It helps to notice what this means about the emotion itself. The small sting you feel scrolling past someone else's success is not your mind telling you that you have failed. It is closer to an old defense reflex, firing the same way it would have fired if a member of your band had suddenly started acting as though they were above everyone else, and your own future safety depended on noticing that shift immediately. Think of it like an old alarm system installed in a small house with only a few doors and windows to watch. The system was calibrated perfectly for that house. It could track every entrance with ease. Then the house became a city, with 1 million doors and windows, all connected to the same alarm. The system does not know the scale has changed. It keeps ringing over and over for every door it can see, because ringing is exactly what it was built to do. That is closer to what is happening when you cannot stop refreshing a feed built entirely out of other people's best moments. The alarm is not malfunctioning. It has simply never been told that the house got this big. None of this means the feeling of comparison will disappear once you understand where it comes from. But there is something genuinely useful in recognizing what the feeling actually is and is not. It is not proof that your life is falling short. It is not a verdict on your worth, calculated by some neutral internal judge. It is a very old alarm system, tuned for a village of 30, going off inside a structure the size of a city, faithfully doing the only job it has ever known how to do. It is worth noticing, too, that this alarm was never built to distinguish between a real rival and a curated highlight reel. In your ancestors' world, if someone appeared to be thriving, they almost certainly were, because there was no way to fake a full granary or a healthy family in front of people who saw you every single day. Today, the appearance of thriving can be manufactured with a well-chosen angle and a flattering caption, and your alarm system has no way of knowing the difference. It reacts to the appearance of a rival exactly as it would react to a real one, because for nearly all of human history, appearance and reality were the same thing. So, the next time you notice that quiet verdict forming, that automatic sense of falling behind or getting ahead, you might ask a different question than the one your instinct is asking. Not where do I stand, but how large has the group become that I am comparing myself against? And was this alarm ever built to make sense of a group this size? You still open the app to check the weather, but now, when 4 minutes pass and you find yourself somewhere else entirely, you know exactly which alarm is ringing and exactly how old it really is.